Michael, great to see you again. Welcome back to Popternative.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Hard Eyes is available on digital. It's amazing. So much happening with this film. I kind of want to know because right down the middle, man, you nailed it, right? It's funny and scary. So even before you kind of start kind of writing this thing, what are those preliminary kind of conversations or thoughts about that 50-50 split of the horror aspect of it and the comedy specifically?
Well, the thing on this one that was a little bit different than anything Chris and I have ever done together is there was already an existing script.
Yeah.
So Phil Murphy, wonderful guy. He wrote a really good first draft of the movie. Phil, I think, would be okay with me saying that he had a little bit more of a straightforward slasher vibe in his script, a little less romance. And when Chris and I read it, we immediately sparked to the idea that we could do a 50-50 split, and that's what would make it special and stand out. So that was like our goal from the very beginning of doing a true slasher movie, but also doing a true rom-com at the same time, which I think was successful.
There's been a lot of, we're talking about the digital release, but there's been a lot of conversation about, the fun community aspect of going to the movie theaters. And I feel like the horror movie genre is like the perfect genre for that because there's so much fun to go to the theaters. You and the team made the perfect theater movie, in my opinion, in regards to that. How many conversations came up with everyone, with Christopher and everything, about the fact that it's like, and Josh, about making it the perfect like popcorn theater movie specifically?
We talked about that a lot because Spyglass very much believes in, sorry, dog's barking at the right time. Spyglass, Gary Barber believe very much in theatrical. So we knew going in that it was going to be a theatrical release.
Yeah.
So we talked quite a bit about how, like, let's use that to our advantage while we're writing and making the movie, because we wanted it to be that thing that was like an undeniable movie that you had to leave your house to go and see.
Yeah.
And I've snuck into a couple showings and I've seen the movie probably a dozen times at this point, whether it was screenings I had to go to or screenings I threw and that kind of stuff. And it really does play with an audience. Like, it plays really well. And it adds an element to the movie that you just can't buy, because you can't do that unless, you know what I mean? Like, it's this thing you can't buy. And I always have the most fun in a horror movie when it's like that, when the theater's wrong. You
definitely have this ability to just scare people, but make people just have a lot of fun. I feel like that's a Michael Kennedy thing. I feel like that's your thing.
Fun is my jam. I won't say what movie it was because I'm gonna knock it right now, but I saw a horror movie last year. It was so bad in the theater, but the theater was packed. It was so fucking fun.
Yeah.
So like, it made a bad movie really entertaining.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get that at home.
No, absolutely. Is it kind of something that happens, do you think, with your writing kind of style or your interest, that, like Freaky, It's a Wonderful Knife, like they do have amazing kills and they do have the, amazing things we love about seeing a horror movie, but with the cast and a lot of the banter, and with this one with Olivia and Mason, like I laughed so hard when I saw this movie. You know what I mean? Is that something that kind of just happened with your kind of style and interest of writing, or did you always know you were going to kind of be able to make those movies that are funny but also really gory and scary as well?
I mean, I started my first writing gig here in LA was on a comedy, so like I had a comedy. I just have comedy in me.
Yep.
I never used to think I was particularly a funny writer until I started, trying to get hired on jobs here in LA, and people were reading scripts and telling me, you're really funny. Like, the first script I ever read was a horror movie and I never intended it to be funny. And someone was like, this is a really funny script.
Yeah.
Funny you asked that, because on this one, it's always surprising to me when I see a movie with an audience that I wrote and what they laugh at, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't think that's very particularly funny, and the audience does, but then there's other stuff that I think is hilarious and the audience doesn't really react to.
Yeah.
But Chris and I had a conversation last week about this, funnily enough, and we were talking about how neither of us ever considered ourselves comedy writers. We just considered ourselves horror writers. We've both been really pleasantly surprised with how funny people think this movie is.
Absolutely. I
Like, I
chuckled
knew
at
it
your
was
I
funny.
chuckled at your cameo. Maybe not a lot of people chuckled at your cameo, but I chuckled at your cameo because I know you. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I
it's funny, but it's like, I knew there was funny stuff in here. I didn't know how it would play. I didn't
Oh, it's
know it
so
would
funny.
play as like a super funny movie.
My favorite part of the movie, and I'm all about the details. I'm a filmmaker as well, so it's a small thing, and like maybe some people have to go back and watch it, but like I loved when they take Mason into the cop car and they find the and like just
Hilarious.
him in the background, and
Yeah.
you just hear him in the cop car. What? Like it's not me. Like,
Yeah,
that's
and
my
like
favorite part of the movie.
that's a really good example of a scene where most of it was on the page, but then that was also Josh doing a really good job of pushing it more towards comedy. And then, that my favorite moment in that scene is actually wasn't scripted. It was something Josh added in ADR of Mason yelling "what" after
Yeah,
someone else says "what," which is really fucking funny.
absolutely.
Josh comes from a very big comedic background, Josh
Yeah.
Ruben. He was able to, I think, add another kind of layer of comedy
Oh,
to the movie.
100%. It's funny
Uh,
because I spoke to him before I saw Hard Eyes because I spoke to him about whatever project and I asked him some stuff and he said what he was able to tell me. And now I'm talking to you about it afterwards. And it's like some of the things he said, it was like after I watched him, I was like, oh, okay, I understand what he was saying.
what he
Right?
was saying.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, and first time when I saw this, the first time I saw it with an audience, not that wasn't the first test screening, I was like, oh my God, this movie's really funny.
yeah. Oh,
Like the
it's
test
really
screening went
funny.
really well, and like the audience was dying laughing.
Yeah,
In fact, we
absolutely.
actually had a couple moments from the test screening where we had to dial back some of the comedy because people couldn't hear, like the van scene, for instance.
Mhm.
The noises the hippie couple's making in the background were actually much more prominent in the first
Mhm.
cut of the movie. And the test audience gave us a negative score on Mason and Olivia's backstories. And they didn't realize they heard their backstories. They just couldn't hear them over the laughter. Because the audience was just going nuts.
I
And
laughed a lot. I think I texted you too. I was like, I laughed a lot more than a
yeah,
lot in this movie.
yeah.
Two more quick questions. First question: it's really exciting to think about the fact that a movie like this can be part of two types of marathons. It could be part of that kind of like spooky season Halloween marathon, but you can also put this on around Valentine's Day, or even if you're just in the mood for some rom coms, because it does have the rom com component. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
it's a
So it's
good
like
rom-com.
absolutely. So I want to kind of know a little bit about what you think about that aspect of it. And is that something that for future projects you think about a little bit, kind of making movies that have abilities to be marathon in different kind of spaces and bending the genres a little bit specifically?
You know, For me, I don't like to think too far ahead just because you never know. Like we've gotten a lot of questions early on this process. Like, what's your sequel going to be? And it's like, hey, let's
Mhm.
just make one good movie. So I tend to look at the replay value. I don't think about it when I'm
Mhm.
writing, but I do know that I write in a lane that I think is very rewatchable.
Yeah.
No, nothing I write is super dour. And so I feel like, I learned with Freaky and then with Knife that there's a lot of people who love both movies as like a comfort watch.
Mhm.
And I think Freaky, or not Freaky, I think Hard Eyes will have a similar a
Mhm.
similar thing going on,
There's some crazy things in Freaky that I always talk. Carter Glade, who was in my film, adjoining as well. We always joked around on set. I was like, because his kill is so memorable in that. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
was like, it was the opposite. Like with him, like he's a killer in mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Totally. Totally.
But and then last kind of question. First, are you wearing the shirt that you wore in the movie? Is that the shirt you wore in the movie?
That I'm
I,
wearing right now?
no way. I remember it being kind
No,
of a
yeah,
shirt.
no, it was like a white, big baggy sweater that the
Okay, for some reason I thought it was like the colors. I don't know. For some reason, okay, I was like kind of like when I was talking about your copy, I'm like, wait a second, is that the sweater?
No,
But
no,
it's
yeah,
not.
that was the costume designer gave me this really amazing outfit to wear, and literally anyone that knows it's me is like, "Did you get to keep that sweater?" And unfortunately, the answer is no.
Absolutely. And then last question. I've worked with a lot of people that work with you, and they have told me about how just excited and how involved you get in a lot of different kind of like aspects of your of a movie, essentially. Like you write it, you're producing it, you're talking to a lot of stakeholders involved with your films. What are those conversations specifically in Hard Eyes like for you? Like, what are those conversations like with the actors compared to your conversations with Josh specifically? Are they similar? Are they different? Does it depend on the days specifically? Because you're all storytellers
Yeah.
making the best movie possible.
Depends on the day, you know. I always try to, if I'm on set, I always try to make myself available as a resource to anybody, including the actors, but I also try to really do a good job of respecting the director's process. I
Yeah.
don't like to step in and say, what if you did it this way? Or what if this actor said it this way? I will, however, have no qualms about pitching something to them,
Yeah.
you know, to the director usually. Because what I'll usually do is pitch to the director, and then if he likes it, he'll go pitch it to the actor.
Yep.
Because I like to try to let the director speak to the actors as much as possible on set. Uh, Hard Eyes and Knife were different than Freaky. Freaky was my first film, so I was learning a lot. But Hard Eyes and Knife, as a producer on both, though, during breaks from you know stuff like that, I had a really open communication with the directors or with the actors on both films. And Josh on Hard Eyes and Tyler on Knife were both really good about letting my voice be heard
Yep.
too.
Absolutely.
You know, I found myself very fortunate on those movies I've mentioned of working with directors and crews and stuff who are always about best idea wins no matter who it comes from.
Mhm.
So there's a really open set that I've played in quite a bit now, fortunately, where no one's precious
Yeah.
about who they are and what their role is. So like if it's the best idea, it doesn't matter who it comes from. And I think that fosters a really warm set too, because Knife, Freaky, and Hard Eyes were all very fun sets to be on. And I think it's because of that kind of stuff, you know?
Absolutely. And, you
Yeah.
know, Hard Eyes is available on digital, so they could check that out. So
Hell
much
yeah.
fun. Michael, so great chatting with you again. Thanks so much for coming
Yeah,
back on the
Pete.
show.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Your Instagram is just it's just Michael Kennedy or Michael
Michael TJ Kennedy for Instagram.
Awesome. There's always you're always posting stuff, and like you're
Yes.
always also like sharing stuff from fans, which is amazing. And I hope more
I love it.
filmmakers do that. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to do.
Well, it's been Pop Turner, youtube.com/Pop Turner, previous episodes. Till next time, it says Michael Kennedy and Peter Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.